Good evening, beautiful people on internet. So my name is Parag, and we are going to start learning Tailwind from this new series. So I'd just like to introduce you to something called as Tailwind CSS, which is being overly used right now in the market, which is having a lot of hype. So before moving to Tailwind CSS, I'd like to introduce you to few key concepts while choosing a basic CSS framework. Let's try to understand what CSS libraries and frameworks are basically. So first we have something like component based frameworks such as Bootstrap, Materialize CSS, etc. And then we have something called as utility based CSS frameworks such as Tailwind, which excels. Tailwind is such a framework which actually excels in utility based CSS frameworks. So when we are talking about component based frameworks, we actually get set of classes. We get actually have component like, let's say, a modal, an image gallery, right? So in that case we are also having CSS along with the JavaScript, such that let's take example of Bootstrap. So in Bootstrap you have something called as modal, jumbotron, etc. stuff. So you can directly import, copy paste the component and start using it. Maybe on the fly you could change the colors and etc, all that stuff. In case of Tailwind doesn't provide you with that kind of components. Tailwind provides you with set of utility classes such as padding 4. It's a class, margin classes, shadow classes, etc. And in this way, it becomes very easy for a developer to not write a lot of CSS. The only caveat or con of using Tailwind, I'll say, is you have to write your own JavaScript when you're designing a custom component. Let's say, for example, a modal. So you have to write your own JavaScript in that case. But that's not an issue when you're a very good developer and you're especially coding in JavaScript and other front end things. So with that, let's get started with Tailwind CSS. So we'll be designing a sample website today, and for example for you guys I have taken something called as redwood.js. This is a fairly simple page, good title, a logo, a landing page, h1 tag, a few buttons. Then there is something like a grid or a flex type layout we are going to design, and yeah, that's it. I think this would give us a good idea like how Tailwind works, what are the different utility classes, how grid system works, how flex works in Tailwind CSS, etc. So let's get started with that. To do that, you could either start your own project, let's say a Vue project, a React project, Svelte project, anything. But Tailwind provides you with something called as Tailwind Play. It's called as Tailwind CSS Playground, when you could start coding with your components on the fly. So I'm going to use this. They have this beautiful boilerplate ready. I'm going to remove that. So before getting started, there are a few things you need to consider before starting Tailwind. First is the configuration file, wherein you have a lot of other configurations that you might be using later on, as and when your custom use case grows. Second thing, you could write your own custom CSS as well if you need. These are the basic Tailwind CSS classes that are going to get imported, and this is your HTML. So let's get started with developing this particular website. We'll try to cover it as fast as possible. Let's get around. So we're going to have a division. So this is how it goes. I mean, you need not write any kind of CSS. Let's say, for example, I want a particular div which is of height, let's say 24. So when I say h24, it's a predefined class. I might show you. Let's type height. So in this case, Tailwind will give you all the classes with predefined classes with height. Let's say I have typed height 4, that is around, let's say, height of one rem. So Tailwind doesn't use this px based styling because it's pretty old. It's better to use give values in rem so as to adjust it in bigger viewports and screens and other set of media devices. So we have h24 and I want it to be full width. So we'll give it W full, and now I want to give it a background. Now this is where the magic happens actually. You might have to write a lot of CSS, not a lot of CSS, but actually you will have to write CSS and assign it a class or a particular ID. But in this case, you just have to write your own class. In that case, Tailwind has a lot of colors. I'll just show you colors. They have something called as customizing background colors, customizing colors. So this is the color palette that is being provided by Tailwind by default, and I must say these colors are really useful for building any sample website. If you are even making a website for a client, these are really beautiful colors you could get started with. So I just want W full, BG, let's say pink 500 or 50. It could have any value. As you see, it's having I think they are having a JIT compiler, and it's live previewing hot module reload they are having. So in this case, let's go with 100. So as you know, as you can see, we are having these classes live. We could build this entire website now. So let's get started. The first component that I want to have is a wrapper div. Let's say this entire page, I want this page to have a container which has a minimum height of screen, minimum at screen. It gives it the minimum, it occupies the entire screen actually. Alright, so if it gives BG pink 50, it is going to occupy the entire screen. In our case, let's see what color these guys are using. I think this is probably, let's see what matches. I think it's rose. Let's go with rose just to match their theme. It could be any color. We really don't care at this point. So yeah, so let's get started with the first component, that is going to be this particular navigation bar. Now there is this concept called as containerization. You wrap your entire application or your front end in a container. I'm not going to code that in this video. We are just going to have a very basic padding from the edges of the screen. We would cover the container stuff in the later videos. So let's get started with this particular theme of designing a navigation bar. So first of all, let's try to understand what's happening here. You have redwood.js. Let's try to ignore this particular search button, and then on this corner we have this particular version and couple of, let's say, buttons. Alright, so what shall we use if we ignore this particular thing? Tailwind provides us with flex classes, right? We could use something called as flex, and let's say it will be flex row. We could have flex justify between classes, right? Since we are going to we need to have this redwood on the left side and this particular thing on the right side. So let's go with flex. Alright, so we are going to have a division class. Let's give it a height of 24 pixels with full BG. As of now, I'm going to give it rows 100. Yeah, there we have that div. Now for demo purpose, I'm going to give some padding in this case. Let's say px8. Alright, now we need to have a flex, so I'll say W full flex justify between, and then we'll have two divisions. One will have, let's say, the logo, and the another will have, let's say, the icons. Now you see how easy it is to literally justify items on two corners of your web page using just two classes, Tailwind classes, right? We'll also look into the height and how to align them in center. Sorry for the delay. 16. Let's consider it as 16. Now what do we feel? What are we trying to achieve? Now this particular logo and this icon, they need to be centered vertically as well, right? So we have again we have a Tailwind class called as justify center. Oh, sorry, it means I got it wrong. I think it's item center. I hope so. Oops, it's not working, I guess. Flex justify item center. Okay, what's the catch here? Oh, okay, all right. We need to give it I need to give it a flex here, and yeah, the parent class should also have the class of flex. So that was the reason. Oh, flex, got it. Justify center, items center. Here we go. We have all these items centered. So let's try to go. This is redwood.js, redwood.js. I must say this is a pretty interesting JavaScript framework. Redwood. Now let's try to understand this. This is fairly a bold kind of font, right? So we have again some set of utility classes. Font, here you can see, I'll say it as bold. Yeah, pretty good. If I want to increase the font size, I'll say text access LG to XL seems fine. So these are again set of utility classes provided by Tailwind, right? You could view these classes anytime in their documentation. Now let's say if you want to have this uppercase, so in that case they have a class called as uppercase. If you want to increase the letter spacing, they have something called as tracking. So tracking, I'll say wide. So it looks pretty good. And if I want to give some color to this text, as of now, let's say since we are going with rose, let's take the most dark shade of rose, 900. Looks good. They have it in black. Let's go with black. For simplicity purposes, let's go with black only. Now talking about these icons, let's consider how many elements are there. We'll start with this particular set of icons. These are, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 icons, right? So again, in this particular class where I've written icons, I'll say it as flex row, since the items are in row, and then I'll say, and then we'll have those items, let's say, in paragraph, or we could wrap up them in div as well. Let's say item 1, item 2, item 3, item 2, item 3, and we have item 4. Now do you see a catch here? I mean, these items are getting like way too much joined with each other. How do you have some kind of gap in between them? Since we are using something called as flex, they have again inbuilt utility class called as spacex. If you want to give some kind of spacing between the rows, you have this class of spacex2, spacex. Let's go with spacex4. This seems fine. Now I want to add few icons over here. So for this thing, I have opened hero icons. So this is a good library you could get started with. I hope they have GitHub icons. I'm not sure they have it at the moment. Let's try to take any random icon as of now. You could easily replace those icons, or let's say GitHub icon logo. So what do we have? So they have a logo here. Let's take this logo at the moment. Let's copy it, and in our first item, you could add an icon, you could add an image, anything. To demonstrate this, I'm going to add an image just to showcase what utility classes we could add to an image thing. Okay. It's a, they have a white background. Sadly, I think we need different thing. Let's search for a PNG transparent. Alright, let's take this. We're already short of time. Open new tab. We have this logo. Let's see, open a new tab. Okay, oh god. This is really sad actually. Okay, let's take this example only. So class. So let's give it a width of, let's say, 8. Oh, fine, it looks good. And then we can have rounded full to give it a border radius of 100 pixels. I'm not going to add all these particular items again, so I'm just going to loop over this things 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 maybe. Could have another icons here as well. So that justifies, and they have something like this. I hope you get the gist. Now let's come to this particular lander. Now what do you see in this particular lander? There are, let's say I see it as this as the one first section, and this entire section as second section. So in this case what we can do, we could have divide the entire screen like this part. Let's consider this part as 1/3 of the width, and this, let's consider this as 2/3 of the screen. Okay, and this can be achieved in Tailwind using the flex again. So this is where navigation ends. We have a different class. Okay, let's give some kind of background just to identify this. Shows 300 minimum at screen. Okay, there we go, and we have W full. All right, and then we want to have padding of 12 pixels, no, 8 pixels from all the sides. All right, let's type okay. This works. That's very easy way to understand where your items are getting placed. So what we want here is actually, this is a lander, and this is going to occupy 1/3 of the space, and this is going to occupy 2/3 of the space. We are going to achieve this using flexbox only. So let's take a div, give it a class of W full flex row, means we are going to have a row, and then now let's say we need to have this 1/3. We'll just try to replicate them. Okay, and this is 2/3. Now at moment they seem like this, but we want them to have to occupy 1/3 of the screen. So this can be achieved using just this simple utility class called as W1/3. See, and the second class, second division, they have this class of W2/3. It's that easy actually. And if you want to see if they are actually occupying, let's give them other set of colors. Let's say red 50, and again PG yellow 500 for just demo purpose. Okay, now again in this case, if you want to have some kind of gap between these two, as you know, we could have this class called SpaceX, but at the moment we don't need to have that. We also need not have this particular color now. All right, so let's go here. Let's take this image, open this image, copy it and paste it here. 1/3 of the screen is occupied by the image itself. Let's try to wrap everything again in one div. Image tag src. Okay, we have this beautiful image over here. I think it's occupying the maximum space, which is okay as of now. We need not worry about it, but we could add the classes later. Let's go with this particular headline. Now in this case, when we are coming to this section, 2/3 section, we have this headline, and below it we have this text, and below it we have this particular CTA buttons. So let's try to consider this in terms of flex. Now flex row won't obviously work here, so we have something called as flex column, the column layout. We're going to apply column layout over here. All right, so 2/3 of the screen, again we are going to wrap everything in div. It's always a good practice to wrap elements. All right, flex column. Okay, then we have paragraph, which consists this text. I am going to remove this particular background. All right, class text 5XL. Okay, fair enough. This is good actually. Yeah, I think 4XL would also work in this case. Fair enough, that's good. Second thing is this paragraph. Let's try to copy this paragraph and paste it here. All right, now you want to have some kind of spacing between these items, right? You want to have some spacing, that this particular paragraph should have some margin or padding. There are multiple ways we could do this. either we could go on this paragraph, have a class of margin top 4, empty 4, margin top 8, alright, or what we can have is we could go on to this pairing class, flex this flex column, and have something like space y in this case, because we are dealing with columns here, right? Space y 4. Bam. To make this thing more beautiful, we can apply a class of font light, maybe. Oh, this looks good. This looks pretty good, yeah. And let's have our third division. Now in this case we have two buttons. Now guess what? What are we going to use in this case? Obviously we could have this wrapped up into flex container, in a single flex container. I'll show you how. So division, let's take two buttons. Button, what CTA do they have? Start the tutorial and read the docs. Start the tutorial, and again second one is read the docs. Alright, so we have button. We'll style those buttons, obviously. Just have some good indentation. It's always a good practice to have a good indentation to understand your code and not have confusion. Alright, let's give them some classes. First of all, let's give them a background. I'll go with rows 400. Fair enough. Then text white. Okay. Padding x of 6 pixels. Padding y of 3 pixels. Okay. Do they have rounded corners? Yeah, they do have rounded corners. So rounded LG. Okay. So they have set of classes. Rounded top LG. We want it to be completely rounded. So rounded LG. Okay. So this actually looks good. We'll just copy and paste this complete class to the next button. All right, perfect. Now again, this particular buttons have some spacing between them, and we are going to give the spacing flex. We are going to have flex row, and we are going to have some spacing. Let's consider a spacing of space x of 6 or probably 4. That works. Perfect. Alright, so this is a white color button. Alright, so let's give a background of, let's say, rows 100 or probably white. This is good. And rows 800. Read the docs. Do they have corners? Yeah, it has a border. So how do we give a border? We just add a class border and give the color. Border rows probably 800. That works. Now this guys also have something like, when you hover on this button, you see the background is getting a bit lighter, and if you hover on this button, the background is having some kind of another background color. So K in Tailwind has this magic of using hover classes. So we could literally do this magic in using the hover class utility. Hover. What do you want to have on hover? When you hover on it, you want the background to be of rows, let's say a dimmer color, a lighter color, 300, right? And when you hover on this particular button, you want the background to be a little darker. In this case, VG rows, let's say 100. Alright, let's try it. Okay, cool. We have achieved it. One more thing. There's a different actually. Just please excuse me on what we have. So this particular div is occupying this much area. I'll just give a particular, for your understanding, I'll give a border to this particular div. Border. Border rows 800. And in this case, I'll also show you what is the problem. Alright. For simplicity, let's give it a height of 64 pixels. That works. That might not work actually. Let's give it height of 32. No, 48. All right. Let's go at 56 just to make things simpler. Now I want this particular image to be in the center of this particular box, that is 1/3 of the screen. So what do we have? So since we have this particular div, let's give it a class of full. Let's give it flex, justify, center, and items center. Now in this case, we have this flex row. All right. We want this particular items to get aligned in center with relatively with each other, right? Like let's say this div is let's give it a padding y of 12 pixels. Okay. Now I want this image to be in the center of this particular box horizontally and vertically as well. All right. So what do we do? In this case, let's consider this 1 by 3, right? Now bg red 50. Why is it showing bg red 50? Let's give bg red 500. Okay, perfect. We have this border. We'll remove this border as of now. Now I want this to get aligned in the center, right? So we'll give it a flex item center and justify center, and we'll remove this color right now. We'll also remove the border. Perfect. This seems perfect. This seems nearly perfect. I won't say perfect, but nearly perfect. So yeah, that's the first part of the website. That doesn't look as good as theirs, but we have achieved something in this case. So before going to this lower part, let's try to see how this website actually looks when we view it in mobile. Okay, so this is not what actually we had planned. Let's take a ratio of 400 by 720 pixels. So what do we do? First of all, let's look at the navigation bar. I certainly want the font to be less big. It should be small. So we have this breakpoints in TailwindCSS. TailwindCSS has a couple of breakpoints. Let's try to look at them. Breakpoints, responsive design, right? So they have this particular breakpoints as of now. Let's take an example of, let's say, tablet, laptop, desktop. Just like Bootstrap and other frameworks, they have this similar convention of SM for small screen, MD for medium, LG for large screen, XL for extra large, 2XL for double extra large, the kind of big displays we are getting these days. So what I want is, for large screen it will be 2XL, but for small screen I want it to be text small, text SM, alright. Also I don't want it to be at 16. Let's keep it height of auto and give a padding Y of 6 pixels, probably 4 pixels, seems fair. Now again, these particular icons, they are of width 8. Let's try to give it a, try to adjust all these widths for small screen devices. For small screen, let's keep the width of 4. And also we want to reduce this spacing to space x2, probably space x1 would seem fine. Now talking about this particular part, now what we want this particular image to be on the top and all this text in the bottom, right? So I think that is something flex goal, right? We have that will be a column based display. So we have in this particular div we have written flex row, but for mobile screen we need it to be flex column, right? So it's simple as adding flex column in mobile, and for large screen we need flex row. Again, we need not occupy 1/3 of the screen in mobile, we need to occupy the full screen. So for LG we have W1/3, and for small screen we have W full. Same goes here. We have 2/3 for the large screen and full screen for the mobile. Alright, this looks nearly perfect. If we actually try to remove this background, at the moment this looks perfect as of now. So yeah, this was the most basic template that we had done. I hope you guys understood the basic concepts of using Tailwind, some flex related things, some column related things, and how you're going to align, where do you use flex row, where do you use flex column, and other stuff. In the future lectures, we are going to explore a lot of design experience. In this case, we are going to design lot of other pages. Let's take an example of, let's design an entire GitHub repository page in Tailwind. Let's design Twitter's page in Tailwind as well. Let's try to understand. And the good thing is we need not write a single line of CSS code. We haven't written it yet. In future, we might need to write some kind of CSS code. We might need to have some kind of animations, WebKit animations. We'll have a look at them also. At moment, I hope you guys understood this. It was good taking a lecture for the first time. Let's catch up in the next lecture. Thank you.